Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a Ferndale Public Schools Committee of the Whole School Board meeting being held by Open Meetings, the Open Meetings Act on Wednesday, July 29th. It's being held virtually via Zoom, which is granted by the governor because of the COVID pandemic. It's called to order at 6:27 p.m. Roll call, Ms. Shepherd.
Dookie.
Here.
Oh, Hart.
Here.
Abraham.
Here.
Kermuller.
Here.
Latash.
Yes. Here.
O'Donnell.
Here.
And President Davison.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 1.2, the approval of the agenda.
Mike, there's the one recommendation to move the public comment to after the presentation due to the fact that people would probably want to hear kind of return to school planning and then have an opportunity to provide public comment based on what's shared.
Any thoughts, Board of Education? Anybody opposed?
Good idea.
I like that idea. I want everybody to be able to comment on what we say instead of before.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay, so item 1.3 of public comment will be moved to, will that be 2.3? Will that be, public comment will be its own agenda item number 3, and the next 3 agenda items will be bumped to 4, 5, and 6.
And I would say also, just so that the board has a chance to take into account the public comment also, that, you know, we can continue our discussion on the presentation after the conclusion of public comment, if that's the will of the board.
That any objections to following up with more discussion following public comments? All right, so do we need to add an agenda item then for more discussion?
I don't think you would. We can just hold that. We could just suspend that item and then come back to it.
Okay. All right. Item 2, informational items. 2.1, designate 2 trustees to serve on the Oakland County School Board Association DEI committee. This is an announcement that came to us on July 17th that the Oakland County School Board Association Board of Directors is forming an ad hoc committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they are inviting each district to designate 2 trustees to serve on the DEI committee. And the DEI committee will meet monthly for 2 years, usually on the 3rd Wednesday of the month. And the first meeting is being held on Wednesday, August 19th via Zoom. So I just asked that this be added to the agenda. Two board members have expressed their interest in serving, Anna Ibrahim and Sandra Dookie. And I wanted to find out if I wanted just to present this to the board and find out if that's the will of the board and if anybody else is interested.
I'm fine with that.
I think those are 2 great choices and volunteers.
Support it too.
We appreciate, I think it's great that the county's doing this, and I'm sure that, you know, Ferndale will be a good active contributor to that committee. So I will send those names on to the appropriate person. Informational item 2.2, the Ferndale Public Schools return to school planning options for the 2020-2021 school year.
All right, thank you. We are excited to share some options and looking at the start of the 2021 school year at Ferndale Public Schools. The entire team has been working extremely hard on trying to figure out the best way to meet the needs of our students and staff with going through really an unprecedented situation. I don't think something that any of us ever thought that we would experience in our lifetime. Unfortunately, there's been loss of lives. There's been loss of access to quality education. There's been people who've gotten sick and will unfortunately suffer the long-term effects of this. Yet, I am really encouraged by the resolve of Ferndale Public Schools and in that we will provide students with an educational experience that they are used to, that they are accustomed to, and we will do everything in our power to make meaningful strides as we go navigate through really an uncertain year. So I'm going to hand it off right now to Johanna Marekna, our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. She's helped us develop the plan, really looking at it through really a teaching and learning lens and how we can best meet the needs of our students. So what I say too is we will give kind of our thoughts on each of the options, but we wanted to give the board viable options that we believe we could accommodate within reason. At the end, we'll look for, board direction on how to solidify the plan, because the next step in the process is to submit the work, return to school plan to Oakland ISD, who then submits it to the state for approval. What happened, what we thought a week ago, 5 days ago, 3 days ago, yesterday is much different than what we think today. The data continuously changes. School districts in the areas, plans continue to change. And so just please understand that as things change, we have to be able to respond to the new information and data as it comes. So again, we're going to discuss kind of some viable options and then share where we are leaning as an administrative staff, and then open it to comment, and then decide really the direction so that we can complete the plan and then hopefully have it approved once completed by the Board of Education. So again, today there's no voting on a final plan. It's for the board to say, all right, we understand the options, which we've shared, prior to this meeting, but here are the options. Let's discuss it with the community, and then let's have clear direction moving forward. So Johanna, I'm going to make you the host so that you're able to share your screen, but you'll have to watch if people come in to admit them. Okay. So you got to do two things at once.
Yep, I understand.
All right.
Okay, thank you everyone for being here tonight. I see this is a really well-attended meeting, which makes me happy because I think we can get the most input from the community, which is important when we look at what we're going to be doing for our children. Our team has been working extremely hard to look at logistical options, equitable outcomes, and the best possible solutions for our students for the upcoming school year. We have come up with some, I'm going to admit a few more people here. There we go. We've come up with 3 options that we think are feasible. 2 of them we believe are stronger than the third one, but we're still going to present that option because it's important that we present all of the possibilities. And we'll take a look at what those look like. So I'm going to share a presentation. Okay, is everyone able to see that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I think Danya might have to do, in addition to make you host, might have to enable multiple screen sharing.
Or Danya, can you share it?
Yep, I can share it.
Great.
You know, tell me next slide and
Yep.
Nothing's
Oh.
coming up yet.
yeah, it's not letting me share anymore.
Okay.
It should be, Johanna's the host now, so it should be sharing underneath her. There could be a button when it comes, the share screen comes up. There's 2 buttons down on the lower left.
Yep. It should be sharing.
Oh, there,
Is
now
that
it is.
not?
Now.
Now it is. Yeah, I was
Okay.
gonna say, because I don't have access anymore. I handed it over.
Yeah, okay, good. We're all set then. All right, so we have 3 options that we're going to present tonight. An in-school option, a hybrid option, and then a virtual option. So those are the 3 that we've looked at. So I'm gonna sort of do an overview. Our first recommendation would be, or option I should say, would be in-seat 5 days a week plus a virtual asynchronous instruction for students whose families do not feel comfortable coming back to the school. That would also include synchronous office hours for the virtual component. Our second option would be a virtual synchronous instructional model that included learning labs. And I'll get to what those learning labs would look like as well. And we have some draft schedules that we could look at. Those we have not worked with the union yet. Those are just ideas for us to discuss. But we will work with our union members, our teachers, to make sure that we have a schedule that abides by our CBA and that meets the needs of our students. The third option is an A-B hybrid, and that would also have a virtual asynchronous instruction model with synchronous office hours. So these are the 3 best options that we were able to come up with. I do want to say that, yep.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt for a second? Somebody asked that you define synchronous and asynchronous.
Yep. So synchronous means that the teacher is online with the student for a period of time, sort of like a face-to-face instructional model. So you would log on like we're doing right now. This is synchronous. Asynchronous is where a student works online and then the teacher may log in at different times to grade that work, provide feedback, etc. So what we have right now is a synchronous experience. Asynchronous would be where people are working perhaps at different times. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll move on here. So first we'll go over our ideas for in-seat full-time with that asynchronous instruction with a synchronous office hours component. So you'll see on these slides some pluses and minuses, and those are some of the things that we see as benefits and as detractors from the different plans. We tried to include those as well. I do want to say that this is an overview. We've looked, for example, we looked at 8 different hybrid options when we presented the best one. So if there are any questions, please interrupt. The slide deck could be 1,000 slides long if we included all of the nuances, but I'm happy to discuss them if anyone has questions. We saw this as a benefit that students would have 5 days a week with their teacher, those who were in school, face-to-face. A plus and a minus would be the ability to social distance, and that would depend on how many students selected the in-school option and how many students selected distance learning. And depending on how many students selected each type, we could have issues with our lunch logistics, feeding children, making sure that those needs are met. We may not if the numbers were low enough. And that would depend on family selection. Some of the problems that we know will be an issue if we have this in-school component will be shared supplies. So we will have to purchase additional supplies for students. And we are concerned about the time that it will take to sanitize buildings, particularly at the secondary level in between every class, which is required by the executive order. We are also concerned about mask wearing compliance at the secondary level. Teenagers are teenagers, and we always want to have restorative, reparative interactions with students. And this is a concern that it could become confrontational between students with mask wearing compliance. The asynchronous component of this plan, the virtual component with the synchronous office hours, we love that it allows for choice. Students would have a large selection of courses to choose from. We also are encouraged by the idea that there would be no virus transmission at the school for those students who were in the asynchronous learning environment. However, we are deeply concerned about losing live instruction for those students with their teacher, and we are extremely concerned about access equity for our students who are not in the building. So those are grave concerns, I would say, with the plan. Are there any questions on the model where some students are in the school with their teachers and some students are in an asynchronous online environment?
And just as a point of order, these are questions that the board may have,
Yeah,
because the public will be.
yeah, questions from the board.
Yeah, on the in-person, well, a couple of questions. Let me just start with the one that's right on the page here. The synchronous office hours. So would that be only one-on-one or groups? Would
Yes.
include any extra help, you know, as similar to a student who might come in at lunchtime?
Right. So the initial idea is that teachers would hold scheduled office hours for students to drop in, and then would also have sign-up times for individual students in addition to that sort of anyone can drop in. We have modeled the drop-in office hours during our previous closure. So, you know, teachers know how to run those sessions, how to be available to students. But the teachers who would provide those office hours are the same teachers who would be teaching all day in the in-school program. So the office hours would be limited because we don't have more than that amount of teachers, unless we hired a few teachers for the virtual positions.
And then another question would be, in this option, could this, or did any of the models you looked at possibly include synchronous virtual instruction with the students who are on site receiving the same virtual instruction as the students who are remote?
Yeah, I think you'll see, I believe you'll see an answer to that in our 100% virtual model with an option for drop-in labs.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Are there any other questions from the board on this one before I continue? Okay. Okay, so the next option that we know that we can run with fidelity is the virtual synchronous instruction with learning labs option. So I'll go through this second option. When we talk about the virtual considerations, we have a lot of positives for this. There are negatives to all of these, but for this particular model, the negatives are different than for the first one. So for this one, we would have all of our teachers virtually instructing in a synchronous manner with their students. So students would have times online, face-to-face with their teacher through our platform. In addition to that, we can offer learning labs at the school. And those learning labs would allow our most vulnerable population and our students who need a safe place to be, who need access to the internet, and our special education populations the opportunity to still utilize our facilities in a way that would improve the equity of the situation. We would be able to provide lunches through this model, particularly for our students who rely on that food. We'd be able to provide equitable internet access because our buildings would be open for students who were struggling with access at home. We would be able to offer small group individualized virtual options, particularly at our elementary level. We would be able to offer targeted in-person special ed options, but there are some negatives to this. Screen time for our youngest learners in particular. Excuse me, I tried to click on letting someone in. So screen time for our youngest learners is a concern. And the availability of computers at identical time blocks for parents who have students in multiple levels in our education system. The way that this would look, potentially, and these plans will have to be developed in conjunction with our teaching staff, but this is a rough idea of what an elementary schedule may look like. Students would have their morning meeting. They would have time to gather their materials, and this is our pre-K and K that I'll go over, but all of the grade levels have opportunities for these different aspects. Then our teachers would teach in small groups, perhaps, and those would be grouped by the teacher, so we'd still have our master teacher's input on who should be grouped for what skills. Students would still have their specials. They'd have specials multiple times during the day. And we do know that with this entirely virtual plan, one of the considerations is that social interaction. Our students will not be able to have the same kind of social interaction that they would in a normal classroom when they're with their peers. And I don't think that's on the slide, but I think that that's an understanding that we all know will happen. Students would have time for lunch, and then in the afternoon, for example here, students would have reading time, specials, small group math instruction, creative time to perhaps have a special, maybe they'd have an art project, that would be up to the teacher, and then wrap up every day. So this would be an example of an elementary plan. At the secondary level, students would also have the opportunity to have face-to-face instruction with their teachers for several hours a day. For example, again, we will work with our teachers in order to create a plan that meets the needs of our students and also abides with our CBA. So students would have synchronous time with their teachers every week, every day, throughout the closure. So this is an example of what that might look like. Are there questions on this portion before I move on? I'm going to talk a little bit about what those learning labs, the concept of the learning labs is as well. Maybe I'll do that. Is it better if I do that first and then take questions from the board?
Sure.
I'd like to learn about the learning labs first, yeah.
Okay, great. So our learning labs concept is that we would have our buildings open for our most vulnerable populations. We would have critical coverage for families. We would be able to provide safety, lunch. We have some different staffing options for this, while our teachers were online teaching virtually, synchronously with our students. We have included in our discussions for these ideas, we've included our ILTs, teachers, principals, to really look at instructionally what's best for our kids and how we can meet all of their needs while providing an equitable opportunity for those students in our community who we know are relying on us for some of those additional services. So these learning labs will allow for some flexibility and for some equity and some access for students who truly need it. So can I answer questions about the model where we have virtual synchronous instruction and the learning lab opportunity?
I guess my main question is for the learning labs, who can, and you might have already mentioned this, but there's a lot of information here. Who will be in the learning labs to help with the students?
So we have, because our teachers will be online teaching. So we have ancillary staff like our restorative practice coaches, our liaisons, our community liaisons, our student support coaches. We have staff that will be available to provide the coverage for those learning labs.
How will those students be selected or determined that qualify or can apply for the learning labs?
So should we choose to move down this route, we'll develop some criteria for that with the principals, with the teachers, with community members as well. The idea behind the learning labs concept is that we want to meet the needs that our community has said. 25% of our parents have said that they definitely want to send their students back to school. So we want to hear that part of our community and respond to those needs. So the logistics of the learning labs, should we choose this, we'll work on the criteria for entry into the learning labs. And some of that will be dependent on the building level as well, whether it's elementary or secondary. So I think that's kind of where we're at with the concept.
So,
I have another question. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Anna.
so it wouldn't be necessarily a student coming in for an entire day. It would be somebody who would be coming in maybe for a lunch or for help with a class or
Correct.
maybe
Or tech help. We anticipate that there will be significant tech needs where
Okay.
students may not know how to actually get on the computer, and we would be able to help with those types of issues.
Okay, or because some, there's been talk about socialization needs, and so this might provide that, or
In
no?
some instances, it might.
Okay,
There's lots of opportunities for us to develop the learning labs to be by appointment, by day. We can meet the needs of what our community says they need through development of, if we choose this route,
right,
through large input from the community.
okay. Thank you.
But in this model, all of the instruction would be online, and there would be
Online.
a significant amount of synchronous instruction.
Okay.
So I understand that there's a lot to flesh out here. Would there be, if this model was selected, an opportunity for the kids that needed, like let's say, for example, a first grade student whose parent has a single parent who's working, would the learning lab be an option for an all-day educational process where they would do their synchronous education online virtually, but in a more of a safe environment without as many kids in the space? Is that kind of what
That could be an option for our lower levels. Yes.
Okay.
And someone would be there to help them log on and get to the synchronous instruction.
So my question is concerning special ed, and like, as far as the adult that is in the learning lab, I want to make sure that whoever, if we were to go with this route, that we'd have someone there that would have ASD training and de-escalation and like all the appropriate training to make sure that our kids felt safe and supported, and that it wasn't escalated and trauma wouldn't ensue,
Yep. Natalie, do you want to jump in for the special ed component?
Yes, please.
Natalie, are you on?
You're muted, Natalie. Natalie, you need to unmute. Nope. On my screen, the microphone is showing up red, as if you're muted. Now it's open. Now talk. Nope.
I think she had this problem the other night too.
Yeah. Maybe
Her, Johanna,
Sorry?
can you try and unmute her? Because you can mute and unmute.
Yeah, I'm trying to find her. We have a lot of people on. So I'm scrolling through, but I think we have definitely over 100 people. So I will find her. Natalie, are you able to unclick?
Oh, I see. He's near the top now on my screen.
if she's going to address this later when she talks about special ed, I'm willing to wait. I just want to make sure that that question gets answered.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to try to find her in my list, and we will move on. But she does have answers. We talked about it today, so she's prepared to discuss that.
Nick Schultz just said that if she pushes down the space bar and talks, that might work. So give it a whirl, Natalie. It did not work. Okay, never mind.
Okay. So here's Natalie. Natalie, you should be unmuted now.
She's going to log in and out and try it again.
Okay. All right, we'll come back to Natalie. It shows on my screen that she's not muted, but Natalie, if you're plugged into a docking station, you may not be able to, you're not plugged into a docking station? Okay. We'll come back to that soon, as soon as we can. Does that sound okay? Okay.
I'm good with that.
So
All right.
could this be a problem with virtual synchronous instruction?
Natalie has solutions for the special ed students with that model. Okay, so our third option, and I want to be honest, this is for our team the least best option. It's the best option that we could come up with of the hybrid models that we looked at, of the 8 hybrid models that we looked at. But it really incorporates significant logistical issues and equity issues. So I'll still go through it because I think it's important that our community sees that we do have many options. So this is called the AB hybrid plus virtual asynchronous instruction and synchronous office hours. So this one, what this would look like, a positive of this is that, so students would come in on an AB schedule with Wednesdays to clean the buildings. So students would be coming into the buildings 2 days a week. Alternatively, we could do AA cleaning day, BB cleaning day, which does make the cleaning easier because it's the same cohort. We like this option because it provides real face-to-face time with teachers. We can offer synchronous instruction, but only to those students who are in the building. We can offer lunch delivery options, which is important for many of our students. Some of the difficulties that we see with this is, again, screen time for young learners. What do we do with students who attend on the incorrect cohort day? And there's less face-to-face time than our 5-day per week option, and students are still incurring contact risk. So that was a concern for us. And then finally, again, equitable access is a problem with this model, equitable internet access. So that's sort of the overview of how this would work. So can I answer any questions from the board about the AB hybrid option?
So I have a question. So you're saying that if there's cohorts, you can't have students who are in person also have students who are online watch the same instruction?
Yeah, that's a great question. We got some legal guidance, and it's a FERPA violation to stream a classroom where there are students in the classroom whose names, et cetera, might be streamed to an outside source where we can't ensure who's watching from the outside. Because if we didn't have to worry about that FERPA issue, it would be the perfect solution. But it's such a logistical hurdle that there's really no way around it. Even if we just train the camera on the teacher, it is a FERPA violation if we pick up students' voices.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
So I also have a question or a comment. So the AB hybrid is really about keeping cohorts together?
Well, yeah, the AB hybrid is about further reducing the amount of kids in the building at the same time, which if all of the kids were planning on attending in person, it would successfully do. But we already know that 50% of our families are likely to select online no matter what. So that's one of the reasons that this option isn't our best option in our opinion.
So I'm just trying to clarify something. So the point of the AB hybrid is really to keep cohorts together, right? So they're coming to school 2 days, off 3 days, and you're keeping the same kids moving together?
Yeah, so that you don't have as much mixing of the kids and virus transmission.
So I just want to also put out there that it prevents mixing in the school building, but then those 3 days that the kids are out, we have no control over, right? So
absolutely, that is correct. We only have control when they're in the building. We have zero control once they leave the building. And that's the same with our 5-day face-to-face instruction. And that's one of the reasons that if we're gonna have any face-to-face instruction, let's just have all of it so we can give our kids as much as possible rather than have this pseudo reduction and mixing where we know we don't have control even once they walk across the street.
So then I have another question about the AB, and not a question, more of a clarification. So the teacher is still teaching both the A cohort and the B cohort?
Correct. So the teacher would be teaching the kids who are at the building on A days and teaching the kids who are at the building on B days. And so that's why the virtual instruction would need to be synchronous, because the teacher is still teaching in person to those students who are in the room. And so we can't have a teacher in 2 places at once. They can't be doing the virtual instruction and the in-person instruction.
But then at the same time, the kids who are not in school, like at the A cohorts, they're out of school on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so they're doing the virtual.
They would be on the asynchronous virtual platform, correct.
Okay.
Which means the teacher will be doing the same lesson potentially twice in a week.
That's correct. They'll do the lessons for their A cohort and then they'll redo the lessons for their B cohort.
Could the lessons be recorded for the students to watch?
We did ask for legal on that, and we got the same FERPA issue that once that recording goes out, if there's any student voice, then we're not within those FERPA guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Would that be true across the board, or could there be waivers? Don't we have media waivers for most students?
We do have media waivers, but those media waivers don't cover student educational records. And what happens in the classroom is, sometimes what happens in the classroom is part of a student educational record.
Okay.
So there's no such thing as a FERPA waiver?
There may be a FERPA waiver. We can look into that.
Yeah, it's even most schools that are looking into options, kind of the distance learning that we're all familiar with. you know, in college, we've had distant learning where, I know at my high school, I took AP biology. It was at another school. I sat in a room, but there was no, I was opting into something that only I could view as a student and then seeing the lecture, but no one was actually with the professor. So it was 30 students zooming into, it's basically the virtual option. And that's what we've seen as distance learning. Like 30 students opt into like a Zoom call and then are able to see the professor do the lecture. So it looks like he's teaching or she's teaching a class, but it's like baseball.
There's nobody in the room.
Yeah, it's like baseball with no fans. It's just, there's nobody actually there.
We might need to we might need to mute people.
We got lots of spinach in the house, babe.
Okay.
You gotta love.
We thoroughly explored the 8 hybrid options, and there are these types of issues with every one of them. This is our best hybrid option, and I hope you can see that the issues are concerning. We also looked at an AM/PM cohort. There are concerns with cleaning between the 2 cohorts that way.
You don't really worry
So,
about it.
so of the 8 options,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Johanna. Can you mute everybody so that if we want to talk, we can unmute ourselves?
Yeah, I sure can.
Thanks.
Let's see.
Buck's gonna finish the job downstairs. I'm just gonna let him finish it. He's gonna do it Saturday morning.
We call you. What is that green up there?
Okay. Hang on just a second. Okay. All right. So next, we do have some data to provide to the board to take a look at some of the data points that we use to make some of these plans. So here's our first one. We had a very high response rate compared to what we normally get, which I think shows the level of concern, of anxiety, of worry that parents have for their students. So we had 1,571 responses, which is approximately half of our families responding. Our normal survey take rates are nowhere near this. So I think this is pretty good data. So around 50% said that they want a virtual option. 25% said that they wanted an in-person option. And 25% are not sure yet, which is fair. These are hard decisions. And I think those 25% wanted to see what the options that we're going to offer are potentially.
What was the period that the survey was open?
I'm sorry?
What were the days the survey was open?
Bill, can you answer the question? How long was the survey open for?
Well, mostly I want to know when it ended. Yeah, you know, when it started and ended, because things have been evolving so much that.
Yeah, we had it open until just a couple days ago.
Okay.
And it opened, this is our most recent survey. So this is recent data within the past week and a half. I'm not sure of the exact date that it opened and closed, but Bill can tell us.
Yeah, it's about a week and a half.
That's good enough. Yeah.
Is that good enough?
Was it a good cross-reference of buildings, ages, communities?
Yeah, so we definitely took that into concern, and we have another data point for that. You can see we surveyed each building. So the buildings have different response rates that you can see here. We also called principals and asked them to call families that typically may be non-represented in surveys and to enter the survey data for those families while they were on the phone with them, so that we had a true representative sample of all of our communities portions. So we're fairly confident that this data is representative of all of our families, of all 4 communities that are within our larger community, and of different ages and schools. Okay. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about Accelerate and why we think this is probably our best option, what it offers, and what students and families can expect from interaction with this?
Sure. Thanks, Johanna. So as Johanna said, we've examined several online providers so that in whatever plan we move forward with, families will have an option to go 100% virtual, or if we start in person and then we have to close for a period of time, we can be much faster in terms of continuing with the student's education. So we looked at several different programs. We had Oakland Schools brought in several vendors. We took a close look at Accelerate Education, Edmentum, and Edgenuity, which some of you might know as E2020. We really tried to look at the courses that were offered and the experience that the students would get. We've settled on Accelerate as our preference. So I just wanted to give you a couple of touch points with what Accelerate will provide for students, and then what teachers will be able to do with it. So for kindergartners through fifth graders, every student will have courses in English, math, science, social studies, health and PE, and then an art class. The middle school courses will be the 4 core English, math, science, social studies. They'll also have health and PE options, as well as world languages and some typical middle school elective options. High school students, in addition to the 4 cores, will also have health and PE, additional world language options, several typical high school electives, including career electives, and included in the English, math, science, and social studies offerings are several honors and AP courses. So the honors and the AP were unique to Accelerate, which made it kind of one of the reasons that we went with Accelerate. Next slide, please. And then, so as far as what advantages it gives to the teachers and the parents, teachers will be able to edit the content. So even though we have content provided, the Ferndale curriculum will still be our standard default curriculum. So we're not just saying, okay, students, do this Accelerate course. Teachers will still be able to control the content, the order of the content. They'll be able to add links to Seesaw or Google Classroom. They can add Envision and Journeys links. Those of you that already have students in the district might recognize Envision and Journeys as our math and elementary reading resource, as well as Discovery Education, which we're purchasing this year as well. And then also we can link in to the Accelerate through Canvas, which is a learning management system. We can provide links for the district provided online resources such as IXL. So there's a lot more detail that we could go into, like Johanna said earlier, but we just wanted to kind of give you kind of a quick overview with a few touch points and highlights of why we went with Accelerate. A couple of screenshots to kind of show you what it will look like for a student. So when a student logs in, and all K-12 students will have the same, what they call a landing page. So when your kindergartner or your 12th grader logs into Canvas, they will have a dashboard with tiles for all of their courses. You would click on a tile, and then it would open up the course. Students can work on the lessons. Next slide, please. Sorry. So here's just, again, a very quick snippet, one ELA course. So students would get a mini lesson, and then they'd have some independent practice to work on. So again, very quick snapshot, but that's kind of Accelerate in a nutshell. That's all I've got.
Questions? Any questions from the board for Tom?
How would this work in an all virtual platform? Would there be, Would there be real time with the teachers incorporated with this platform? Is that the idea?
Right. Yeah. So this is like, so in a classroom, you might have a teacher who hands out an assignment on paper. The teacher in the virtual classroom is going to hand out the assignment virtually. Hang on just a second. Let me mute here. Thank you. Okay. So the teacher may pass out this assignment while they're all together in the classroom.
When would the training for this, when does this get purchased? When does the training start for the teachers? Will it be enough so that everybody's comfortable with it?
So Danya can talk about the purchase. I'll talk about the training a little bit. The purchase and the training are kind of tied together. So we would like, if we decide to go this route, we're looking to purchase quickly. But the training, we do have scheduled time for we have 3 days of DPPD this year with our teachers at the beginning of the year. We have already blocked off a significant amount of time of that for tech training. Additionally, buildings have title funded PD earlier. It's optional, but most of our teachers attend, and we will be utilizing some of that time at the building level for the tech training for teachers as well. Additionally, we've talked with our tech consultant from Oakland Schools about creating a teacher library for user friendliness, for explaining how to do different things, creating some videos, and all of our weekly tech and twos for the first several, probably months of school will focus on the usability of the program for teachers. A second component of this, of course, is training students so that our students can access this. And should we decide to go with any of these routes, we will be offering some training sessions, potentially outside under tents for students to come be connected to our Wi-Fi system at school and learn how to log in, how to do the course, how to contact their teacher, how to log into their virtual synchronous sessions. And we will provide a booklet and a guide for students and families.
So if I can jump in real quick, sorry. Anna,
Yes.
This Accelerate with the Canvas is actually a potential purchase through GenNet, which is part of Genesee ISD. And as part of the purchase, they are going to provide as much PD as we would like. And that PD, obviously it can't start until we have an MOU in place. But Genesee ISD is actually starting their PD August 4th, and they will run their PD throughout the entire month of August. So in addition to all of the PD that Johanna mentioned, for teachers who are interested in, kind of getting a head start, there will be an option for that as well.
And that would be, where would that be?
It would be virtual.
Okay. So, okay.
Was there another question there?
Nope, I was just running it through my head.
Okay.
Is there also an option of having a learning session for parents as well?
Absolutely.
I know I had a terrible time navigating.
Yeah, no, we definitely talked about.
When I said the student training, really what I meant was family training.
And family training could be done through Genesee County also. Yes, no?
No,
they did say that they would work with us on whatever PD that we wanted.
Okay.
But the conversations that we've had this week have kind of focused around Ferndale staff providing the family trainings.
I see. Okay.
And just to clarify that, the training from GenNet is on teachers using the platform to upload, to select, to curate their courses. So that side of the interface, families won't need to see. What families are looking for is, how do I log in? How do I get to my classes? And how do I find my teacher?
I see. Okay. All right.
And one thing is we want to be clear is that we understand that it's going to take time and training. So it's not that August 31st, first day of school, we expect everyone to, we're going to take, I mean, the first 4 days of school are usually for social emotional curriculum, building relationships. Obviously, this will be included. The reality is there's a 3-week lead time for them to be able to set up the system for our district. So that's why we have another meeting tomorrow to consider the approval, since all the information is given this evening. So
Now, would teachers be getting that same kind of leeway? And
yes, I mean, we're going to be providing the training in a way where it's clear based on the timeline of when Genesee gets the system, outdated. We'll have a professional development calendar that's clear, so everyone knows when parents are being trained, when students are being trained, when staff is being trained, so that everyone knows kind of this is when we're, this is where we're at.
I see. Okay.
And part of, if we decide to go with the fully virtual option with the learning labs, that will be an option for our learning labs. We know there's going to be continued access issues for some families with how do I get in? People have different levels of tech skills. So that would be another opportunity for us to provide long-term ongoing training for families who need it.
Okay.
Natalie, can we hear you this time?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you. Great. You sounded like a Verizon commercial.
Yeah.
So back to the question, we'll just, if it's okay with everyone, we'll jump back to you discussing learning labs and the potential for special ed options.
Yes, absolutely. So the learning lab is really a little bit of a different concept than the in-person special education instruction. We know that our students in special education were disproportionately negatively impacted. For this student population, we really need that in-person time to really be able to best meet their needs and ensure that all of our students are making that educational, really meaningful educational progress, even, in considering the complex circumstances that we have. That is still our obligation, that's still our commitment. So understanding what the needs of our student group is, we know that we need that in-person instruction component. So it's different from learning labs in that these will be the building special education teachers who are teaching the students. It will be targeted based on the level, whether we're talking about early childhood or elementary or secondary, and it will also be targeted and individualized based on the type of programming. So our students with the most significant disabilities are our students who, are in what we would call a self-contained type of special ed classroom or environment. That's when students are spending most of their school day within that special ed setting. For those students, I am really, we're working, Johanna had mentioned, in working through details and working with the union and with the teacher group. But I would really be looking for, probably a good solid 3 or 4 days for those students to be in person. So it's different in that it is still taught by the special education teachers. And it's different because although students with IEPs, will to whatever extent, the greatest extent possible, participate within that Accelerate K-12 content program, these, the special education providers will help to make that accessible. But in addition, they will receive that specialized, targeted instruction to address what those learning gaps or those learning needs are. And that's what would be done in that in-person component. So that is the broad overview. And then students with an IEP may also choose, parents may choose also to, as appropriate and as the team still is appropriate, and parents, based on their preference and their needs, we can also look at students participating within those learning labs But that would not be instead of the special ed component, that would be in addition to. And I think the question had come up earlier, how would we support our students with IEPs within that learning lab? So that would be something that we would look at on an individual basis. But if we needed to build in supports for a student who needed to be doing that, you know, that K through 12 accelerate curriculum within those learning lab days, you know, we would look at how to do that for each individual student. So that gives, I hope, an overview of what we would be looking at for provision of special ed programs and services. But again, it is all individual based on a student's needs. So our teachers, our teams will be working with parents to really develop what that looks like. So it's not a predetermined, you know, one kind of, you know, here's two options and everyone needs to fit within those. That is not at all what special education is about. So we, you know, to the greatest extent possible, I want to be able to maximize in a safe way that in-person instruction and also to be able to individualize supports.
All right, thanks for that, Natalie. I'll probably have more questions again later, but that was good for like the learning lab. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I have a question about Accelerate. It's not just a learning management, from what I'm understanding, it's not just a learning management system, it's also curriculum embedded into it.
Correct. Sorry for not being more clear. Canvas is the learning management system. Accelerate is the curriculum content.
So that, so if the board adopts, passes, pays for Accelerate, we're ultimately changing our curriculum.
No. Sorry. The purpose of Accelerate is to kind of lessen the burden on teachers so that they don't have to create online lessons every single day. We would still be following Ferndale curriculum, but teachers would have the ability to pull lessons in from Accelerate to supplement what they're providing online, so that instead of a teacher having to create an instructional video to, you know, talk about solving a quadratic equation, they could pull in the lesson from Accelerate and then have, you know, their own independent practice or synchronous conversation with the students. Does that make any more sense?
Yes, but
Okay.
But the curriculum in Accelerate is like the whole curriculum for a particular course though.
Correct. It is Common Core aligned for math and ELA, K-12.
I think to further clarify, the expectations for teachers would not be, oh great, here's my Algebra 1 course, let me just download the 50 assignments that are in here to my classroom and I'm good to go. Instead, what we would expect is that they are still using the resources that they typically use, but the resources that aren't electronic that they may use in a classroom, they would be able to pull a version that is for that particular lesson from a bank that already exists.
So just playing devil's advocate, but there's nothing stopping a teacher from using whatever in the curriculum carte blanche already, unless someone's actively monitoring.
And that's where we'll lean on the administrators.
Yes, your wonderful administrative team.
Yeah, you know, that I would expect that Johanna and I would be part of all of these online classes, and we'd have access through Canvas, so we can monitor and make sure. And in addition, go ahead.
You know, the same thing could happen in a brick and mortar classroom. You know, a teacher could just hand out a workbook and say, all right, guys, this is your lesson every day for the rest of the semester. So, you know, that would be sort of the electronic version of that happening. So that's where our expectations, our training, our, you know, our administrative team, our teacher leaders, our coaches in our schools will be able to mitigate that, just as they would in brick and mortar.
So I have one more.
Yeah.
I like to ask the hard questions. So I haven't seen Accelerate, and we have this new resolution that we just passed. Has someone looked at, like, is there is there a way for higher ups like Johanna and Tom, is there a way for you to restrict access to certain lessons? Like if there's something in there that we know we don't want teachers to have access to, period? Is there a way to do that?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can definitely ask Genesee ISD about that. But on the flip side of that, teachers will have access to multiple levels of content. So if I'm an Algebra 2 teacher and I know my students didn't master factoring quadratics from Algebra 1, teachers will be able to reach into other courses to make sure that students have the content that they need. But as far as restricting, I'll have to check on that.
You know, I think similar to a brick and mortar classroom, like we have really great professionals. We trust them. That's why we hired them. Our staff works hard for our students. And just like they would in a classroom, they will be doing the same thing online. This is just a tool that already exists, similar to Teachers Pay Teachers. You know, sometimes it's the night before a quiz. You don't have a great quiz written, so you go on Teachers Pay Teachers and you spend $1 and you buy the quiz that you would have written yourself. This allows teachers to do that in a virtual environment.
Oh, I totally trust our teachers. I just wanted to make sure that that it was clear of what the product is that's being discussed.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and especially with the ability to bring in other materials, which of course a teacher could always add to it, especially in the areas of English or social studies or things like that, where we want to make sure that we're providing access to diverse authors, diverse perspectives and points of view.
Yeah, and you know, this isn't entirely different than particularly what our secondary students are used to. We are a Google district, and Google has what we like to call an LMS Lite. It's not a real learning management system, but students have been in virtual environments with our teachers already, and our teachers are used to linking different virtual content in a virtual environment. But Canvas is definitely a step up and has a lot more capabilities because it is a real learning management system. So that's one of the real benefits of this this platform that we selected.
And one more question for me. Is this platform, Canvas and Accelerate, applicable to the virtual synchronous option, or is it only the in-person with virtual asynchronous?
So the proposal that I'll be sharing tomorrow is that we purchase Canvas and Accelerate for every student at Ferndale Lower, Ferndale Upper, Ferndale Middle, Ferndale High School, and University High School. So it won't matter. Every student will have access.
Okay. And then what about, I think there was a slide on this, but I'm trying to absorb as much of information as possible. So I apologize if this is redundant, but I remember world languages, but what about in the all virtual option with the learning labs? What about, since I had a student who was most interested in visual arts, what about arts and music education? What happens there?
We've had several discussions at the district level about how to offer those virtually. There are some good models for things like choir, band, utilizing Zoom platforms or other connection platforms where schools have had some real success. But that, to be honest with you, that's going to be part of the development plan once we pick what we're doing. Once we pick what we're doing, that will be probably one of the very first things that we focus on, is exactly how to do specific courses.
Okay.
But the arts in Ferndale are one of our pride, you know, it's a pride and joy in Ferndale. So that's something that we've talked with the music department already. We have some studies on if we're in person, what does that mean? Do we need to bag instruments? Do we need to be outside? Those kinds of discussions. But then if we're virtual, what does that look like? What are the expectations? But with synchronous instruction, students can still join together for a synchronous virtual choir class, for example. Are there any more questions at this point from the board, or should I move on? Is it okay to move on?
I think we have a lot of questions, but go ahead and move on.
All right, so yeah, we're actually at the final end here. I'm going to turn it over to Danya to discuss what our final recommendation is, and then we can discuss and have questions and go from there if that is acceptable. Is that okay?
So Johanna, if you could put as in the backdrop, to refresh the presentation, I did add the IEP data with I think you might have to go in and out because I added the slide. So yeah, you'll have to, yeah.
Okay.
If you could play it, because it's not through, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just, I got to move some things around on my screen. Here we go. There we go.
So this shows you, we have about a 10 to 12%, or no, 12% special education population in the district. This shows you the breakdown of how many people, prefer virtual versus in-person. It's interesting as they get older, you see at the early childhood center, there's more of a leaning towards in-person. But as you go up through the grade levels, it's pretty consistent with that of the students without an IEP. So that's the data that was asked for. We had pulled it and taken a look at it, but there it is for you. Also, people have asked, I've seen on the chat, people have asked if we're going to be posting this presentation. We certainly will post it to the website and make sure that you can take a deeper look at it on your own time. So getting back to the, the decision to go school or to hybrid or virtual. I can tell you this has been, there's been a lot of discussion with staff, administrators, the board in terms of what's best for kids. Unfortunately in this situation, I don't think there's a solution that answers all of our questions and meets the need of every student. There's a cost for each of the decisions that we might make, and we don't take that lightly. It's been, again, very difficult because I've been hearing from every side, people who would recommend hybrid, people would recommend in-person, people would recommend 100% virtual, all of them valid points. And we could make the argument for any model during this time. Ferndale Schools has always committed that students and staff safety is our #1 priority. We are in the midst of a pandemic that's been unpredictable, that has taken the lives of many people. So it's just, we're in a situation where we cannot take this lightly. Obviously, we believe that instruction is best done in person. I think during the closure, there was always an appreciation for teachers in Ferndale Public Schools. We're a very lucky community to have people who understand the importance of education, but across the state, I think there was a newfound appreciation for teachers, and we certainly appreciate ours. So in making a recommendation to you, we believe at this point where we're at with the data, in terms of the capacity of the buildings, the size of the buildings, the safety of our students and staff, we are recommending a full virtual plan to start the school year, which is not easy to do. A school is very lonely without students, but we have to rethink our educational model during this time. It's not to say that there's not hope we'll be back. What I would recommend, and the team, what we would recommend to the board is to go virtual through October 31st with the decision to revisit on October 30th to see where the data is at and where we are at with the vaccine in terms of product development in that area. Again, we cannot risk the staff and students' safety. I don't know what I would do or the staff would do if somebody were to become ill or it would be spread. I just the other day, I kept going back and forth in my own mind of what's best for kids. And then I hear the Marlins baseball team, 17 of 30 people were infected. These are multi-billion-dollar organizations who have the capability to create a bubble, so to speak. We do not have that ability, and we have to admit that we don't have the ability to ensure that it will not spread. So would we rather start the school year a week into, 2 weeks into, and perhaps have a positive test and then create chaos to then flip to a virtual model? That's where the difficulty comes in. So again, we have had long discussions about this. We have talked, Johanna worked extensively with our principals and our instructional lead teachers to have these discussions. We've surveyed the community. It seems to be that that's the direction that everybody is leaning in.
So just to be, and this is the virtual with the learning labs. So virtual taught
Yes.
by Ferndale teachers with learning labs for the students that need it.
That is correct.
Okay.
So I have a question about that learning labs, and it was touched on a little bit earlier, but previously we've had SAC. And for parents who are working outside of the home, would learning labs have extended hours potentially for parents who need that childcare opportunity?
So there actually is a potential that SAC could run in and of itself. We've been meeting with other districts in Oakland County, and we're waiting for guidance from the ISD on providing SAC potentially. There are some districts that are offering some type of hybrid model, or they're considering offering a hybrid model, and then also offering SAC. So, I think that would be a discussion that we could have, and maybe some board direction. The concerns with offering SAC, again, are the secondary mixing of groups. You can't cohort the kids the same way that you can in a school, unless we had just an absolutely massive staff to do it with. But for the learning labs, we could look at different options for hours, for drop-in times, for sign-up options, really based on what our parents are saying that they need. We want to be able to provide what our community needs. And we know that there are disparate needs based on who's in our community. And we have to listen to everybody.
And Danya, you're
I'm sorry, Jim, before you go on, can we end the screen time so we can see everybody again and the screen
Yep.
share? Thanks. Sorry, Jim, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's helpful. When you said October, Danya, that's just to revisit
Yeah, so, yeah,
where we're at.
exactly.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
sorry.
I don't know, not too many of the public health professionals expect October to be much different. Just to set realistic expectations for everyone. This is going to go on until next summer.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just holding out hope so that October 1st we can assess the situation, and then obviously if we feel it's still not safe, we continue as is. And it might we, evaluating where we're at, it might work well to go through first semester anyways and maybe hold out the hope for second semester. Again, we'd be open to that as well.
Yeah. My question along the lines of doing an October hope date is, would that put too much pressure on the staff to try and formulate two different models? Or if we just said, we're going to do one semester for sure virtual and allow everyone to really focus 100% on what that's going to look like and make sure that the core is met, the teachers are up to speed, we can get in the specials how we need to, special education is where we need it to be. I'm just worried about stretching everyone too thin. It's already hard enough to work in this virtual world, but to have everyone try and figure out two plans.
Well, I think if we came back to school, the students are still going to be assigned like a master schedule as they normally would. So you transition back, but with your devices, and transition slowly from that online to inline world. But I agree with you and Jim. It's more probable that it's not going to occur. So again,
okay.
Yeah, I like the hope of having kids in school, but I understand that it's just, the odds are not in our favor.
I don't think it's wise to put an October date out there. What they're looking at as far as a spike, a secondary spike, would be November, December. And they're based on what, if you look at how people are reacting to any further shutdowns or masking or social distancing, nobody's taking, not nobody, but there's a fair amount of people who are not taking that seriously. I don't see that those numbers are going to be coming down. I would anticipate that we're probably going to see increases in this. So to give anybody the hope that maybe October would happen, and I know Dr. Bazzi, you would rather not have to do this, I know. And it breaks your heart, I know. But I think that we do have to be, I've been looking at this through the many lenses that I've had over my lifetime. I've been a respiratory therapist, so I've worked in critical care in hospitals. I've been a teacher. I've been a mom, a grandma. I've worn a lot of hats, and looking at this whole COVID thing, I don't see that there's any way to safely and in good conscience bring kids back into a building right now. I just don't. Unless it was, the modifications that we could make with small groups of kids coming in. But it would be, I've heard people call it immoral, and I feel that strongly, that we need to go virtual and assume that it will be for the first semester completely.
I understand. I'm in agreement.
So
I'm with you too, Anna. This has been keeping me up at night.
Yep. And lots of tears. Lots
For
of tears.
sure.
So
Yeah, I hear you, because there are, the most, we don't always hear, and especially in the media, or what gets passed around from other people on social media, but we have heard from people in our district who readily acknowledge the trade-offs here, and the fact that, like Danya said, all the options have some kind of real human cost. And, I worry about equity in terms of kids that don't have enough resources or the right spaces to learn online. I also worry about kids that are at risk from more complications from the virus, whether they have asthma or they live in large households, and the virus is just going to spread around the house more easily because they pick up something at school. it's a difficult decision, and the district has the job of figuring out what overall is best for kids, what we can do to make sure that our whole team, the staff, have the resources they need to do the best job that they can do for kids and also stay safe themselves.
Now, what I have, and this is this dream in my head, is that because the Ferndale School District, with its 4 cities, there is a lot of creativity. And I think about how could we give those at-risk kids, and by at-risk, I'm talking about the kids who need to be socialized, who need to have company. How do we, as the adults in our community, how do we make that happen for kids? Can we have play dates at parks with small groups of kids, everybody masking, have 4 kids together? Is there a way that a community group could do that? It's not education, but it's not book learning education, but it's education. Are there stopgaps that we can put together? Because this, even though we feel like this pandemic is going to go forever and ever, it's not. I have faith. So are there things that we can be thinking about doing to pick up the slack in the other areas? So just thoughts out there.
I think we'll look at creative ways to connect with students when it's safe to do so.
Right.
I know families have been connecting in small groups, but certainly we will look to be innovative during this time and set up outlets for students to have some interaction, again, in a safe and meaningful way.
So how does the district, the plans for, we've seen a lot about what the plans are for teachers and students, but additional staff whose families are going to be at home as well because their school will be teaching online and virtual. What are the expectations for our staff? Do they also have the ability to work from home because their children are home?
So Johanna, do you want to take that or you want me to?
No, I can. Our plan, and just to clarify the question, do you mean for staff who would be potentially staffing our learning labs, that type of staff?
Yes, as well as like supporting staff like in enrollment or administrative support, some of the little ancillary positions that aren't directly teachers but also work in our district.
Yeah. I think our practice up until this point has been that if you can work from home, then you can work from home. And that's what we have had all along. Certainly there are positions that require in-person, an in-person mode, such as our custodial staff. They have to be at the building to clean it. But wherever possible, we want to be flexible, fair, kind with our employees, keep our employees safe. Employee safety is at the heart of making our district run. If employees don't feel safe, they leave. And we can't have that because we have good teams. So, in terms of the staffing that we do need in the buildings, we will look for those who can't be and potentially see if there's a different job that they may be able to do. But our intention is to survey staff, to follow all of the guidelines from our HR department, to allow for staff to have the flexibility that they need where possible. Danya, did you want to add
Yeah,
anything to that?
the one thing is we really have to work, we got to work through a lot of the logistics of that in terms of some of that, but I agree that for those who can work at home, we certainly will. There will be cases whether we're busing students to learning labs and we need to provide, you know, a route to allow kids in a socially distant, safe way to come to the learning labs. We have to look into that. Obviously, with food services, we have to still be able to service, you know, our breakfast, or I'm sorry, our lunch program that so that kids can eat. And again, we want to connect that to our learning lab. So that is, come into the building to go to the learning lab, they have the opportunity to eat lunch. So it's going to be dependent. Like we have to work with, we have 5 bargaining units in the district, and we have to have those, like into the specifics of that, we have to work with each of the negotiating groups to come to an agreement. And again, I talk about things like at a building. We didn't have to tell our secretaries to come in, check on the building, clear out the mail, send invoices because bills are still coming through the mail and things like this. They did those things. So we will be explicit, but we need to have conversations with them about the expectations and the parameter in terms of returning to work in a safe way for necessary tasks.
But if we do the all virtual, it'll allow us greater flexibility in order to provide those safeguards for the staff,
yes.
the essential staff that needs to be in the buildings. And then
We
the
can
distance.
screen, we can do temperature checks. There's not going to be groups of people. We'll be able to clean the high touch point areas. We'll have the ability, yes, to make sure that things are much safe. Because a number of us, for example, in central office, we've been coming to work all summer. And there's about 15 to 20 of us, but we're coming in at various times, various days, where I am usually always wearing a mask, but I'm alone in my office. But you know, we've put in safeguards to ensure that we're safe, and I don't want to jinx us, but you know, we've all been safe and responsible in terms of keeping one another healthy.
I'm really
To answer your question further, there would be such a small amount of staff in the building that we would be able to be a lot more flexible with who that is. People who are high risk, we wouldn't select for those positions. We could look at a volunteer basis for those positions rather than forcing our entire teaching staff to come in.
I feel like, you know, like Dr. Bazzi said, there are downsides to each decision. And I feel like those are really serious downsides. And I just want to acknowledge that. I feel like there's as hard as you know, the learning labs sound great. And I'm sure a lot of work is going to go into that, but I guess I feel like I can't say strongly enough how important it is to make sure that our students who have who have all kinds of needs that are met through school, social needs, really important adults in their lives, sustenance socially and through nutrition and everything that comes with school. I want to implore the district, the staff to really identify kids that would be falling through the cracks and really think creatively about what can be done to engage all of our students. Sounds like my fellow board members like the idea. I like the idea of revisiting it in October. I think we should. I know the forecasts aren't good now, but I think we should revisit it in October. Those are just some of my thoughts.
So I don't disagree with you, Mike. I think we should revisit it in October, but I think the plan should be that we commit to at least one complete card marking, like whatever that is, like Q1, we commit that we're going to do this for Q1 and revisit in October. So that at least if we are making a change, it's at a decent break. Like it's not in the middle of something else, right? Like it's not like week 4, which is halfway through Q1.
Sure.
So, and just to clarify then, I mean, I'm not opposed either. I think we should always keep all options on the table and make sure that we're keeping tabs on things. But if we revisit it in October, would that mean that we're considering reopening it the second semester? Or are we talking about we need to start considering whether or not we're going to reopen for a hybrid or for in-person in October? Because it seems like that conversation should probably then start the day after we vote on a resolution, or on a proposal.
The recommendation was to revisit it like October 1, and then to continue virtual through October 31st. So then if the decision was made like October 1 evaluate, and I'm picking October 1, it could be a week before, a week after. October 31st takes us through Friday of Halloween. Then that Monday to make whatever that Monday is, the 3rd, November 3rd. Then, at the beginning of October, we'd have a month to determine, are we going to head back in or not,
But we should all have a celebration, hopefully on November 4th, right? Just throw that out there.
Yes.
Well, our school buildings will be voting locations on November 4th.
Oh, yeah, we don't have school that day. I forgot. So it buys us another day.
Yeah, I like the idea of revisiting in October. I think that there will be districts that are open for September. So, I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, there will be a lot of data that we can, and that we'll be able to see where other districts maybe have misstepped by opening up and maybe learned from their mistakes. I mean, that's a dire outlook.
Interesting. I mean, it really is gonna be interesting, and I wish them success and good health. I really do, but
oh, for sure, yeah.
I'm also very worried at the same time.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify one more time. So yes, we're all on board with revisiting in October, but what are we committing to when we vote? Are we committing to just online until October? Or are we committing to a card marking? Or are we committing to a semester? Because I think if we tell parents that, yeah, we're going to start online, but in the middle of as you get used to being online, we might flip the script and say, come on into school. I think we need to give people a definitive, this is what we're doing for semester 1, but we will continue to reevaluate in the process.
Yes, I think that we need to go through like a card marking, have it be a specific chunk as well.
Yeah, I don't think we don't have mid-card markings and things like this. I guess if we're willing to revisit it, I would recommend the board approving going virtual through October 31st. And then at the September board meeting deciding, because it's end of September, having a meeting near the end of September, then the board extending that or not beyond that point.
So I'm going to push back again because we're not committing to a semester. That makes our high schoolers and our middle schoolers in this freakish point, because you don't get credit if you only do 10 weeks of a semester, and we're not being clear to parents that yes, this is what we're committing to. So parents are going to be stressed already for the ones who are getting used to online, and then saying that now that you're used to it, oh, it's safe now, come in. I think we need to give more of a secure this is where we are for semester 1. I don't think a quarter is enough, especially when you're talking about secondary kids and credit involved.
All right, that's fair.
That's fair.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think we need to have a specific time period. I mean, things are always changing and fluid, but we need to have something that we can count on.
Yeah, then I recommend through first semester.
Okay, I'm more comfortable with that.
Yeah,
okay.
Me too.
That's good. That works.
I will go along with the will of the board on that.
Imagine we're going to be monitoring it every
day.
Yeah.
every time we get together.
Yeah.
Yes. So at this point, again, I know I'm looking at the chats a little bit, there's a lot, but there's some question of is the plan being approved today? The plan is not. The plan is to have the plan approved on August 6th. We wanted to get, we wanted to make sure that we had a chance to listen to everyone, have the community town hall yesterday. Obviously we've mapped out kind of all three in a sense, but now we can go into more of the detail. I'll make sure that Johanna saves, the chat as well, so we can go through a lot of the comments and make sure that we're answering a lot of those questions. So that's the point of today. So am I clear from the board in the sense of that we should create a virtual plan that's robust, that takes us through first semester?
You know what? Why don't we listen to public comment, and then we said we were going to come back anyway. So let's move to item 3, the public comment that was moved from earlier, and then we'll discuss that again. So this is the opportunity for public comment in our board meeting. It's the opportunity for members of the public to address the board. I imagine most of the comments will be about this, but it could be about anything related, anything the person wishes to say. Please introduce yourself, and each person will have 3 minutes, and I think I will.
Did you want one of us to be the timekeeper?
Yeah.
I can do that.
Okay, Sandra, you be the timekeeper. Each person will have 3 minutes, and Sandra, how are you going to give a virtual hi sign to somebody that they're close to being up?
I could put a hand up, or I could just say, I can interrupt them and say you have a minute.
Yeah, I think something like that, 30 seconds or something.
So I'll interrupt them and tell them they have 30 seconds, which will actually be like 40 seconds.
Okay. Thank you. So if you'd like to address the board, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself, and we'll listen to everybody. So go right ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Val. I'm a parent, and I don't have a completely formulated opinion on one side or the other. I'm an advocate of being a contributing member of deciding the best practice and the best way to develop, as Dr. Bazzi said, a robust plan to return. What I do just want to frame for this discussion is I find the judgment of either side to be deafening. And we truly are all in this together. And if parents are leaning towards sending their child back, or parents are leaning towards virtual, or they're leaning towards hybrid, please don't infuse the judgment. And the term immoral was used earlier. And I just find that to be really, we're dealing with this as parents with young children at home right now in real time. And none of this is easy. We have children with special needs. We are parents working full time. We are sharing dining room tables while kids are learning. Parents are trying to keep their jobs. None of this is easy. My biggest frustration with all of this is the parental judgment and the tone behind it. I want to welcome parents to share and have ideas and be a community and stop fighting each other. I avoid Facebook at all costs because of this. It's fine that we have differing opinions. It's fine that we have differing circumstances. That's what makes this community beautiful. This could make us, or this could break us. So I'm not on here to state an opinion of what I'm doing with my child. I'm on here to say, please, let's just have a reasonable, community-minded conversation, and please leave the judgment at the door. Nobody has time or energy for that. I love you all. I love this community. I'm invested, and it's okay that we disagree. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Val.
Hi, I guess I will jump in. My name is Sylvia Oatley, and I am a parent at Ferndale Upper Elementary. I first of all wanted to thank our administrative team for the Q&A session yesterday. I sent a whole list of questions, and they were very thoroughly answered. So thank you very much for all of that. I came in to this just being ready to spew a whole bunch of stuff and stand up for our teachers. And I'm very thankful that I don't have to say what I had typed up, because I hear you doing I hear you trying to work with your staff as best as you can. And I am appreciative of that. So we may not all agree with, like Val said, we may not all agree with the final decision of where things are gonna go, but I appreciate your flexibility and your desire to use both and thinking instead of either or thinking. And so I love the idea of learning labs. I think that that will really help our students who need extra support. I'm an educator in a different district, and that's a very similar proposal that I worked on with our reopening committee. So I'm very, very thankful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Mike, I see that there's people using the raise hand feature in the chat.
Oh, I don't know anything about raising. Let me look. Teach me. I don't see, are there,
There are no raised hands at the moment. There were raised hands.
Cheryl, you want to speak?
There are people in the chat who said they were signed up to go next. So like there's a Kenton Mackey. No, so.
Okay,
I don't know.
Mr. Mackey. Sandra, do you maybe want to call?
Okay, I apologize. It was just my suggestion to use the chat as a forum to sign up, but I didn't know there was a raise hand feature. I do want to say that I wasn't planning on speaking, but since I've already embarrassed myself.
Mr. Mackey, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Ferndale at University High School, teacher. So I do want to commend the board, because the words that I keep on hearing as you are speaking and as you are presenting are the words teachers, students, and I do support the October return. I think our teachers are fantastic across the district, have time to prep their online curriculum and then reassess. So thank you for thinking outside of the box, as Ferndale always does.
Thank you, Kenton.
So I think Cheryl was next.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Yeppo. I have a senior this year, as well as a incoming 8th grader. So I applaud both the board and the administration. It's not an easy task of what you are faced with, and I appreciate all the information. I appreciate the fact that I will be able to look at this later on and really review it. But I did have a question that wasn't clear. I wasn't clear about grading. I mean, I have a senior, so I'm not exactly sure how we will move through his senior year. I'm interested in some of the more, I mean, I realize that senior year can be very fun and very, very nervous, whatever, but I'm, he's, I'm not sure what he will face, and I need to plan for that. So at some point, I would like to hear some information about our seniors and how we're going to grade their work, and also give them, their senior year experience. Understanding that our seniors just in March and through June didn't have what we normally have, but that's kind of me looking ahead for my son. Thank you.
I can answer that question. So part of that will be in our further plan development. There are several options on the table for grading. When we talk about grading, we want to make sure that we're not grading for compliance, and we want to make sure that we're always looking through an equitable lens for student grading. It's a really easy place to penalize students who don't have equitable access. We want to definitely stay away from that because we see that ahead of time. So some of the options that we're looking at, and we will be working with our teachers to develop the full grading plan, but is allowing for student choice. We know that some students, they want those A's, they're counting on them for scholarships, they need them. We also know that other students have different circumstances, and we want to be mindful of those circumstances as well. So we may look at opportunities for students to choose a grading path or track, maybe even at the classroom level. That will allow some equity for all of our students, and it will also allow students and their families to choose really what's most important for them and what they need for their futures. So the plan will be coming, but that's kind of where our thinking is headed right now. I hope that helps.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think that's it in the chat of people who said that they wanted to have a comment, unless there's someone else.
I do. My name is Erin Molnar. I'm not on video. My kiddos are little. They are going into first fives and second grade this year. So my comment particularly pertains to their age group. I'm very concerned about a full virtual option for a 5-year-old, a just turning 5-year-old in particular. They don't learn by sitting in front of a computer. They learn by interacting, and particularly learning social skills is so important at this age. And I'm not faulting anybody for deciding that an all virtual option is the way to go. But I think particular care and thought needs to be given to how we're going to make it work for our youngest learners, because that's super unclear to me still after having seen the meeting yesterday and what you presented today. I just don't see how this is going to work for a 5-year-old in particular. And then, you know, for the screen time thing, I guess I wonder if particularly if we have synchronous learning with a full virtual option, is there any flexibility in that for parents who, you know, don't want their 7-year-old sitting in front of a computer for 8 hours? Or, you know, mine has executive functioning issues. He can't stay attentive to a screen for that long, and his behavior is affected. So I guess what might be some of the flexibility within the synchronous learning, even like a shorter school day or something for the young kids, or just how are their social, emotional, and particular needs for their age range going to be met? And I don't know that you have an answer to this right now, but just an ask to think about it and then potentially inform parents of these age children kind of more specifically what the plan will be for them.
We do have not a complete plan, but we do have some answers and some research that we've looked at for our youngest learners. What we know is that 8 hours on a computer screen for any learner is not going to work. So we've done some research on screen time guidance and converting a real life experience into a virtual experience. And the average for that is that if you spend 2 hours doing something in person, you should be spending only 1 hour doing that online. And so the potential example schedules that we shared, there's lots of time offline for students to be exploring, playing, having their recess time at home. So for our youngest learners and for our oldest learners, they will not be spending 7.2 hours a day staring at the screen. They will be interacting on those schedules, and there will be breaks built in. And for our youngest learners, they will also have time to be, when they are synchronous, with very small groups. So there will maybe be 6 kids with the teacher. And from our research, we know that large online synchronous classrooms don't work well for our youngest learners. So we've built in some of that modular time where the teacher will be online for an hour and a half, but the students will only be in small groups for portions of that time, for example. I hope that answers part of your question. As I said earlier, we have not yet met with our teaching staff to fully develop what that calendar will look like. But for our little bitties, our tiny ones, that is a major concern for us as well. So we will work to make a flexible schedule where they have time to be kids.
I think Nick was next.
Yes, hello. My name is Nick Schultz, and this is my wife, Carrie Randall. We have a child going into upper elementary and a child that's going to be in kindergarten. We actually both have questions, so I'll try to squeeze them both in the 3-minute time. So did you want to start with yours?
Yeah, mine is to piggyback on what Erin said. So I really appreciate the take that Johanna has in terms of breaking up the day and making sure younger kids have those different modes of learning during the day. The problem, of course, is that we tend to have meetings all day. Yeah. And so if that requires putting a child online, pulling them off, having them do something else, putting them back on, essentially being tech support for that child on top of helping them learn, I think that there may be some kids sort of lost along the way. And I know that's something you're considering. Yeah. I want to kind of reiterate it because, we don't have special needs students. We have kids that are just regular kids that have a hard time focusing and who don't understand technology that well at this age.
And actually, I know that, let me ask my question in there as well, and then maybe you can answer both of those. So just, my question is just for upper elementary. I know that I had thought that they started world languages curriculum. I think someone in the chat had said that they have Spanish. I just saw that in the Accelerate slide for upper elementary. I didn't see anything that said world languages. So I just was curious if that can be offered for upper. So those are both our questions. Thank you.
Okay. So for world languages, it is not offered through Accelerate, but there are multiple programs that we will work with our foreign language staff to look at options. They're not big purchases for world languages for that level. So that is still part of our ongoing plan. And then in terms of tech support, I think that's where the learning labs could be helpful for drop-in help, for scheduled time in the learning labs. We want to be flexible with parents. I too was working and had my kids next to me in what I called their cubicles, and it's difficult. And their cubicles, of course, had no walls. Really, they were just right next to me. So I understand the struggle of working parents and having kids at home and them not really understanding what they need to do and how traumatic this has been for families. So we definitely want to alleviate some of that. And part of what our plan for our learning labs is potentially to help with that. The language issue is not a huge concern because there's many options out there for us to look at. We just haven't had time to look at which one yet. I hope that's somewhat of an answer.
Yes, thank you. And also I wanted to say that I know this is very difficult, and I think you all are taking in many data points and doing the best that you can do. So
yeah, it's not criticism. It's just, so many pros and cons to every option.
Yeah. So thank you for.
I'm glad that I'm not in your shoes.
Thank you for all your mindfulness and deliberation.
Thank you.
Lucy P has a hand up.
I bet that's me. This is actually Carrie Gustafson. For my daughter Lucy's alias. Hi everybody. Can you hear me okay?
You're breaking up. I'm having a difficult time hearing you.
Oh shoot. Am I here? Can you hear me now?
It's a little challenging, but we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. This has been, a heartbreaking slash great meeting. I've been waiting for this meeting. I think there's been a lot covered that's going to be really helpful to spread the word. I have 2 questions. A lot of the chat in the chat tonight was about why can't teachers elect to either teach totally in person or totally virtually, so that when their classrooms and or pods are allowed to come back into school, they've already established their relationship. And also, is there outdoor class opportunities when the weather allows, and will teachers have autonomy to decide if they can meet up once a week for an hour, to the discretion of their classroom size?
I had some difficulty hearing, so I think I got them. I'm just gonna reiterate the questions. The first question, I think, was why can't we split teachers into online teachers and classroom teachers? And the second question was about outdoor opportunities. Is that correct?
She said yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay, so we have looked into outdoor classroom, into purchasing tents, looking for outdoor options for our students should we be in school. It works well until it's Michigan. And so certainly for September and October, it would function well. But come November, December, January, the weather becomes an issue. But we have looked into, we have a large football field, we have outdoor spaces that teachers will be able to utilize if we are in session. But then the second question is a little bit more lengthy of a logistical answer, but I think I can do it justice, which is why can't we split teachers who want to teach in person and teachers who want to teach online? So we operate with our teachers under our collective bargaining agreement, which has class size limits. What in effect would end up happening is the teachers who were at school would still need to have potentially 30 students in their classroom because we can't give those kids to the online teacher because then they have too many kids in their room. So then we wouldn't be able to meet the social distancing guidelines at all for the students who were in classrooms because they'd have the same number of kids as they would anytime. If we reduce the amount of kids in the classroom by half, then we need another teacher for that half of the kids because our online teachers would be online with the students who were scheduled with them. We're very precise with our staffing levels, and we work within a bargaining agreement with our teachers. So that one's a logistical issue. I hope that answers the question. Danya, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, a lot of people are asking for teacher perspective, and I love teachers. I know they're trying to stay neutral and support what the district is doing, but the overall feel in terms of talking to the Ferndale Education Association president and looking at, surveys that we've done internally, the majority of the staff would feel safer starting the year online. Again, that's not to say they don't want to be in the classroom. They do. And as I said, they're not, I can't speak to exactly why they're not speaking up, they're not saying anything right now, but the staff we have are the type that say, okay, what do we have to do to ensure student success and safety, and let's go. So I'm kind of speaking for them, but not really, but all the data that we've gathered has been consistent with the discussions with the Board of Education and the community. Everyone seems to be, again, not everyone agrees 100%, but that is the overwhelming majority based on the data we've collected.
I think she had one more question. If we're doing, and she can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. If we're doing 100% virtual, can teachers elect to do a meetup a week or something?
Oh, yeah, it cut out for that. That's not something that we have discussed it, but we haven't come to any consensus. Part of what we've looked at is the executive order from the governor, what phasing we're in. We look at the cases every day in Michigan and specifically in the Tri-County area. Those discussions will be part of our planning once we decide which way we want to go.
Allison Alexander is next with a comment.
We're signed in under my wife's account, but it's actually me, Ben Moy, orchestra teacher at Ferndale High School, Ferndale Middle School, and at Ferndale Upper. I guess my wife asked me to chime in because, I guess she saw a lot of comments saying that, where are the teachers speaking up and where do they stand? And so here I am. I just wanted to say that, for me personally and a lot of my colleagues that I've talked to, it is, we do want to be in the classroom. We do want to be with the kids, but we also, we want to be safe. And speaking personally for me, like I have other underlying health conditions that make it where, no matter how much we want to be with our kids, it's just not safe right now. And I personally have had, it's been hard, over the summer, just with everything, not locally, but, like everywhere, just you see it everywhere, the debate, and being put in a position as a teacher where you feel like, you're choosing between your livelihood and your health and your life and your own family and your duty to your kids, and your duty to get back in the classroom. And so, it's been hard, but like, I will say that I personally, I appreciate, the board and administration, being there for us and saying that, the safety of not only the students, but also the staff is an important factor. And so, you were asking for where are the teachers speaking up. I just wanted to chime in and, be at least one voice. So.
There's another teacher, Nicole Morrell.
Yes, sorry. To piggyback off that, I'm a teacher at Fuel. I teach 4th grade. I agree with a lot of what was said, and I'm very grateful for the board's position on wanting to start this virtual, especially with, August creeping in. A lot of teachers really just want to know how to plan and what to think about and how to set it up. So hearing that there is such a strong position to start virtual will start to give teachers an idea of how to start thinking about it and planning for it and meeting education with equity. So I really appreciate your willingness to put our health and as a priority, as well as the students' health and the family's health. It's unprecedented, like Dr. Bazzi said. And I think that that's vital. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited about it. I also really appreciate coming back and looking at it in October, but from a planning perspective, I think it would make more sense, as a lot of board members stated, to fully commit to something for one semester and then change it if necessary, so it's not uprooting students and teachers too much. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.
And Rachel E. says she has her hand raised.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel. I'm a parent in the district. I first of all want to thank everyone for being here, the board, everyone, the school staff for putting this all together. You can tell that you guys really obviously have the kids in mind. I also want to thank the parents and teachers being on the call. Just when I think, I've thought of it all or researched it all, I really appreciate my community for getting me to think even further than what I can do myself. So these things are all really good. Whether I agree or disagree, it's always good to expand because there's just a lot to know right now. So I do want to clarify, I think someone mentioned it in the chat. So I have a few questions. With the survey results, the most recent survey results, can you confirm the response of how many people out of the district actually turned in that survey? So that is one question. And then also my question was, if we do all virtual to start, that does include the learning pod. So I was a little unclear on that. So can you answer those for me? And then I have just a comment.
Yeah, I can actually answer the survey response. We had over 1,600 respondents for individual students. In the district, we have roughly 2,400 households that we serve out of the 3,100 students that we serve, being inclusive of our adult and alternative program. If you count Ferndale K-12, including University High School, it's about 2,000 families. So 1,600 is an extremely high response rate. And as Johanna explained, for underrepresented groups that were not responding to the survey, we had principals and administrative assistants call 20 from each grade level, asked them the survey over the phone, and then entered them into the survey. So over 1,600 for roughly 2,000 to 2,400 households. And I say that because TCEC is predominantly already a virtual program. So that's why we saw a little bit less of a response rate from them, because they're already a virtual program. And then, I'm sorry, remind me on the second question. Learning.
The second.
I remembered, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, that would be in conjunction with the virtual option.
Okay. Someone had mentioned the 50% survey results, and the way you quoted it just now was a much better turnout. So that is kind of a nice relief. And it's great to know that you all were personally trying to reach out to the people that didn't respond, especially with all those, with Remind rolling out and some of the communication hiccups that we had. It is nice that the results were that strong. So thank you so much for your efforts on that. So other than that, my last comment is, Jim, if you could just please go with your heart. I love where you were going, with wanting to revisit it sooner. I totally get for the grading purposes. I much prefer the October 31st date, but if that makes it too complicated, I feel like we could work around any potential grading issues that we might have, rather than having to commit at this time to hold out to January. But really, that's all I have. I think being open to returning sooner, if it's safe, should definitely be a goal. So I just thank you all, and that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
And there's Judy Randall in the chat. Also,
after that, Monica's iPad has had their hand up for a while.
Okay, so do you want me to go first then, Johanna?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead, Judy, and then we'll get to Monica's iPad.
Okay, I am a second grade teacher at Lower. I see my principal there down in the corner. I just wanted to give a perspective as an early childhood educator, and also I'm a leader in the union. I was anxious to talk from the first time I heard somebody comment or read in the chat that they want to hear from teachers. I want to assure you that just like parents, we are all, scratching our heads and trying to figure out what's best. And just like parents, there are people on every side of the argument. People that I have great respect for that want to go back face to face, people that I have great respect for that are scared to death to do that. And so I count on the leadership of our district, the leadership of the board. I have complete faith in our families and our community to support the students in the best possible way during an incredibly crazy time. We're also, as teachers, concerned for our colleagues, the parapros, the secretaries, the custodial staff. So when I hear people quote statistics about how children are not as susceptible to, the dire consequences of COVID, I would just ask that that they don't work in isolation. We're not sending 500 kids into Ferndale Lower without an adult staff there that has all of those concerns. So we need to always remember that. And I know the board is doing a great job of that, and so is our central admin. Whatever happens, I just want to assure people we're going to make it work. We're going to support each other. We are going to be positive about it. The teachers that are struggling, we're going to build them up. We're going to hold them up. And I would just ask parents to do the same, to please, 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 in front of your student, in front of your child, always keep a positive mindset. You may have your own doubts. Don't saddle your child with those doubts. They have enough kid stuff to think about. I would just approach this as what an incredible and strange opportunity this is to be a kid during this time. And that they'll always remember this year and these days that they spent virtually in class and how different it is than anything that any of us have ever gone through. But we will get through it, and we'll get the kids where they need to be. I guess that's about it.
Thanks, Judy. And Monica's iPad.
Hi, yes. I'm a parent of a incoming 11th grader at Universal High School and University High School, and I'm also a parent for some children that go to Detroit Public School and a charter school. So I have a lot on my plate, like I'm sure a lot of other parents do. I would appreciate if the school could keep in mind those parents who's juggling more than one kid at one time. And as the young lady in the, I think it's lavender shirt with the little braids, if we can have a concrete plan, at least through the first semester. My family is not returning back to school for the whole year 2020, 2021. So I would think it would be difficult if you change the plan come October and want all the kids to return back to school. Now I'm scrambling to find other options. We're not coming. So I'm hoping that maybe you will continue with a virtual option throughout the school year. If that's not an option, I will hope that you will let the parents know a little early so they can alter their plans as well. Thank you.
Monica, one thing to clarify, and it's a great point, and I appreciate it, is that we would plan to allow people to continue virtually all for this year. I mean, we can't see a situation where we want you to stay at Ferndale Eagle, so we would still facilitate that and then hopefully welcome you back in when you feel comfortable for your children to come back to school in person, to come back the following year. So we're not going to leave you hanging. We're going to make sure that you can continue in a manner that you feel is safe.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's really hard to find, I have to juggle what your new program is and monitor my 11th grader to make sure he's doing what he's supposed to do. I have kids that's in cognitive impaired classrooms. I have a first grader, a third grader, two fifth graders. My hands are full and everybody's using Zoom or Google Classroom or Canvas, and by the time you figure out what to do, they're changing up the programs. So
Right.
yeah, I'm anxious about returning back to school because I'm a full-time teacher. I need a lunch aide over here to help me. I need some maintenance person. I need a nurse over here to help me out. So yeah, if you can just keep that in mind for those of us who's juggling more than one school district or more than one student, that would be great.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily Murray.
Hi, oh wait. Okay. I have an incoming 3rd grader and an incoming 6th grader. We love Ferndale. Thank you to the board and the administrators. You have a lot on your plate. We appreciate everything you're doing and all of what you're doing here. My concern is that the teachers are going to have to do, have in-person, if we do in-person and virtual, that the teachers have in-person students and virtual students, that the virtual students are going to take a back seat because they have their kids in the school right there with them all day. So I'm just kind of wondering how that's going to happen. My kids are going to be virtual for the time being, and I want them to have a relationship with a Ferndale teacher just like they would if they were in a classroom. And I'm a little concerned about the boxed curriculum, or if they're actually going to get direct instruction from a teacher and have interaction like they would normally, I guess. And will my 6th grader, I don't really know a lot about 6th grade middle school yet, but will he have the same number of teachers that he would if he was in school? I'm just kind of wondering about that. I'm just concerned about the relationship with an actual Ferndale teacher because we love everybody that we've had so far.
I think if Johanna, if you want to take it, doesn't matter. But I think Emily, we understand the concern, and I think again we're leaning towards a full virtual model, so they would not have the complexity of doing both.
Right.
Yeah. But
with our full virtual model, all of our students will have that synchronous face-to-face, but virtually, time with their teacher. So they'll be face-to-face through the screen. And your question about middle school, our middle schoolers will receive a regular rotating schedule. So they have 6 classes and an impact hour, and they will still get 6 classes and an impact hour.
Can I ask one more thing? I'm not sure if this has been addressed, but will the virtual students have band and orchestra?
Yeah, we touched on that briefly. We're going to work, up until this point, I think our direction of where we were going as a district wasn't as clear as it's become tonight. We're heading towards fully virtual. So now we can put all of our effort into planning what that will look like. Our goal is that students will have the same options that they would have had if they had been in person. The teaching of that will be a little different, and
Right.
that's where we'll rely on our teachers and our fine arts department to develop what that will look like for students.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And I knew that you were leaning towards full virtual. I was just, in case there is an in-person, I was just kind of worried about that. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
I think
Stacy has her hand up. Stacy? Is Stacy available for public comment? I see you have your hand up.
And the last one,
in the next, yeah.
The last one in the chat is Val Weiss.
Just a quick question. We talked earlier about the FERPA regulations and restrictions with if students were I guess I'll just frame the question this way. If we're completely virtual, would teachers have the ability to do synchronous teaching and not violate FERPA? Because there's not other students being recorded. That's my biggest concern. Like, it's not so much, I guess I would prefer in person more because I want my child who also has an IEP to be getting the guidance and the direction and the redirection from the in-person relationship. And if that happens virtually, I'm completely okay with that. I'm just more concerned about the non-direct real-time guidance from the teaching faculty. So if it were all virtual, would synchronous be able to happen in real time and not violate FERPA?
Yeah, so the difference between videoing a classroom with a teacher where students are in the classroom is that the students are not opting into that environment, right? What we'll be having is a different situation where the teacher is by themselves physically and families are opting their kids into the sign-in. So
Right.
that doesn't violate FERPA.
Okay. That makes me feel a lot better about the virtual option.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sensing that it's all like go big or go home here. Like we have to go all in one way, or the spreading out is not gonna, it's just not, doesn't seem to be working very well. So I am less about the opinions of in person or online and more about like, how can we get behind an option that is the most robust and the most effective for our students, and juggling the needs of parents. I'm not going to ignore that fact. You know, parents got to work, and this is not easy at all. And it doesn't make me a selfish or an unsafe or a, what was I called the other day? A lazy parent on Facebook because I talked about considering sending my child home back to school. So these are tough decisions. So thank you.
Thank you, Val.
Before we get to the next question, there's a question that I think somebody actually, this is why these meetings are great. I think you brought up a great point in terms of the question was, if we came back in October, would that then take the synchronous option away from virtual families, which I think is a valid point. And to some extent, it probably would because of staffing. So that's why now you guys have kind of leaned me towards saying we have to make a commitment first semester, because you're right, in terms of staffing, it would be difficult to provide the synchronous virtual learning as well as in person. So that, you know, the question is yes, to some extent. It's why we don't, you know, that's one of the negatives to virtual and an in-person option as was described in the presentation.
Sarah Elturk has a question.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to first say thank you to the board for putting up with all of our questions and having to vote on all this, because I know it's a tough decision. I want to thank all of the school administration for all their hard work, because I know it's not easy having to make decisions like this that obviously everybody has opinions on. My question was, I still have one last kid who is through the early childhood center, and obviously with our earliest learners, the in-person is the biggest part, the play and that type of stuff. And just want to know how or what we think might be happening from that standpoint with how those children will be taught, or what would virtually be expected of the kids that are from the early childhood. And then kind of a second follow-up, which would be in regards to with the virtual, and if we go back, how that's going to work for if children choose to do the online, so while school goes back, will they still be able to have in teachers, like teachers that they will be in person Zooming or calling with?
I'll let you handle the early childhood part. The part of could we do synchronous if we're back, and that would be a challenge. We'd have to move to like the office hour type schedule. So they would still have interaction with the Ferndale teacher. We might have to consider, the board and I would have to consider hiring additional staff to support the online, which can be done. Because again, we're not going to continue in this format forever. So it might be a one-time expenditure that we'd have to consider.
Regarding early childhood, we don't have a final guidance yet from Oakland schools, but our director of the early childhood program is in a constant state of planning. So I think in the upcoming weeks we'll have, the upcoming week, we'll have a lot more information on exactly how we're going to do our early childhood. It is a sticky spot because the goal of early childhood education is that kids play together. So we're looking more into that. It is on our radar and we will have answers soon. So
Looks like
was there anyone else in line?
One more question.
One more from Deanna Bowman.
Hello. Great. I have a child that's going into 3rd grade. Just kind of piggybacking off what was said. Let's say we start off virtual and then we have the option to go in person, come January. For the virtual learners, will they then use the Accelerate program and then see the teachers during those office hours? Is that how that would look?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So 4 days a week, it's just them using the platform. And then on that Friday or whenever the office hours is, that's when they only get a chance to see the teacher and interact.
Again, we'd have to work out the logistics of the time, and we'd hope for more than 1 day a week for a connection with the teacher. But yeah, it would not be as robust as the full virtual option.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it looks like Adrian had a question about Chromebooks.
I wish Jeff Sharp was here, our Director of Technology, but I believe most, I'm gonna go check, but most of our Chromebooks do have a web camera. So if there's some that don't, we're purchasing, the board just authorized us to make an extremely large purchase of Chromebooks at our previous special meeting. So we will make sure that the new purchases will have that capability. If not, we'll purchase a USB connected webcam that will be able to be used with the Chromebook if there's not one.
Thank you.
And it looks like Michelle Ewart-Wren had a question about parents and students being trained effectively to use the online programs, especially for younger students who struggle with technology.
Yeah, there'll be a PD plan that will include extensive training for parents, staff, and students and families. So somebody just asked the timeline. We are going to work frantically in this next week and provide the state plan that we have to turn in. It doesn't require all of the specific things that the community is asking for, like ratings and PD plan and things of that nature. We plan to have that plan completed, and we will ask the board for approval on August 6th at 6 p.m. For approval on that plan. So that's the timeline. We'll continue to develop in the first 2 to 3 weeks of August all of the particulars, rating, FECC, learning labs, all of the logistical aspects of those things will be further developed. Johanna, anything to add to that?
Nope, that's definitely where we're at. having a better direction after, tonight's meeting, although there's been no vote yet, I think allows us to concentrate our efforts better than on 3 possible modes.
Anya, is there a way to grab the chat and maybe put out an FAQ around August 6th when the plan goes up? Because I think a lot of questions that will probably be answered when the finalized plan is done.
Yes. I think I can, yes. I'm doing it right now. Yeah, I got it.
There's a question from Amy Lerman about Little Eagle. Will Little Eagles follow the same protocol as the other schools, or could they do something different?
Can you repeat that? I had trouble hearing.
Sure. There's a question from Amy Lerman. Does that mean Little Eagles will follow the same protocol as the other schools, or could they do something different?
Yeah, in our discussions, we don't have a finalized plan for Little Eagles because we are looking for guidance from Oakland schools on what the requirements are health-wise and what the requirements are educationally. The requirements at a preschool level are different than they are for K-12 programs. So we are still in the data collection phase for our Little Eagles program. But we should have most of our decision-making done very soon.
I just wanted to take a second and thank our community. Everyone has been great. Everyone has been super mindful and very kind throughout this whole entire process. I appreciate everybody recognizing like what a tough thing that we're doing and that we're all in this together. I am super proud to be a part of this community, and I just wanted to pop in and say that real fast.
I'll just say ditto to what Nan said.
Ditto times 2.
Agreed.
Is there any other public comment?
Oh, one last question.
Last question, yeah. Yes, they will have time. Johanna and the team, we are working on, like we said, a schedule that will allow students flexible time during the school day. So for example, a high school schedule is not going to be first hour, second hour, third hour, like a typical school schedule, but it will use the recommendations of screen time by age and those things. So, we are going to ensure that recess time is accounted for in the elementary plan and things of that nature. We're going to do our best to schedule things so that things are staggered and that things don't cross over. There's going to be a lot of intentionality in creating that plan.
Will that include Mr. Francis's friendly but stern voice encouraging students to come back from lunch?
Yes, and to get off of the counter at the entryway of Ferndale Middle School. Oh, last thing, Rebecca, yes, we're working on creating learning labs that will give kids a safe place to have access to high quality internet and to be able to work, eat lunch. So yes, we will be working on that.
All right.
Last thing, and I do have to say, Johanna's getting a lot of shout outs. She started working on these plans 2 weeks before her start date and hasn't stopped working on creating a plan and working with all stakeholders and managing all of our thoughts and going back and forth and saying, let's try this. I really appreciate all your efforts in such a quick time. You really did hit the ground running, and we are very thankful.
Well, my commitment to Ferndale is rock solid, so that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
All right, we will close public comment. Is there further discussion from the board? Things left unsaid?
Although I do have to point out one of the comments that says, can we have Mr. Francis virtually greet all the kids each morning? Like, I would want to sign up for that. I want to be virtually greeted every morning by Mr. Francis.
We might be able to set something like that up.
For everybody that's watching, Mr. Francis doesn't know he's the assistant principal in the middle school, and he's a pillar at Ferndale.
He stands outside, rain, shine, snow, no matter what, out in the and greets every single kid who walks into the building. He's a joy.
All right, if there's no further discussion from the board, our next regular board meeting is scheduled for Monday, August 17th, 2020. And our next special meeting will be Thursday, August 6th, 2020, at which point we will vote formally on the back to school plan.
Thank you to the community and to the board. Very grateful to the staff, the board, and the community for your support, your guidance, your being a thought partner with one another to deal with a really difficult situation. But I agree with Judy. We will work with one another. We'll lift up our students and staff, and we will get through this.
Mike, we have a special meeting tomorrow, don't we?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
To purchase the LMS.
We'll have a special meeting tomorrow to approve the purchase of the learning management system
5:30.
that was discussed tonight.
Yes, 5:30 p.m.
So y'all can come back tomorrow.
Same link.
I hope to see another 142 people tomorrow for that.
All right, so this meeting is adjourned at 9:11 p.m.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.